Poetry Center, bringing poetry to Patterson since 1980 at Passaic County Community College.
I'm very pleased to welcome you all here to the Distinguished Poetry Series on Zoom. While it's nice to meet in person, it's also quite wonderful to be able to have these readings on Zoom and to reach so many people from so many different parts of the country and the world. I want to introduce Martín Espada, but before I do, I want to give him a special note of congratulations for his recent win of the National Book Award for Floaters, his book of poems published by Norton. It's a wonderful book, and if you don't have it, by all means get it. Martín Espada has published more than 20 books as a poet, editor, essayist, and translator. His new book of poems from Norton is called Floaters, and it won the 2021 National Book Award. Other books of poems include Vivas to Those Who Have Failed, The Trouble Ball, Republic of Poetry, and Alabanza. He is the editor of What Saves Us, Poems of Empathy and Outrage in the Age of Trump. He has received the Ruth Lilly Award, Poetry Prize, the Shelley Memorial Award, the Robert Creeley Award, and the American Academy American Poets Fellowship, the Penn Rebson Fellowship, and the Guggenheim Fellowship. The Republic of Poetry was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. The title poem of his collection, Alabanza, about 9/11, has been widely anthologized and performed. His book of essays and poems, Zapata's Disciple, was banned in Tucson as part of the Mexican-American Studies program outlawed by the state of Arizona and reissued by Northwestern University Press. A former tenant lawyer in Greater Boston, Espada is a professor of English at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. I'm so pleased to welcome Martín back to us, and I think he has one of the most amazing original voices in American poetry of any poet writing today. Let's welcome Martín Espada. And you can do that silent clapping or clap.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. My old friend, the extraordinary Maria Mazziati Gillen, supported me and my work for 30 years, and I owe you a great debt. You get it. You always got it. Thanks also to Smita Desai and to everyone in my workshop this afternoon. Finally, thanks to my wife, Lauren Marie Schmidt, who is present on every page of this book, Floaters. That is the book I'll be reading from this afternoon. And by the way, if you do want to get the book, the best way to go about it is to order it through Barnes & Noble online. Just look it up, Martín Espada, Floaters, Barnes & Noble. That is the best way to go about it. It's been quite a demand since the book received the National Book Award, but you can still find it there. I'm going to read 5 poems from the book, and I'm going to start with the title poem. This is a poem called Floaters. It's about 2 Salvadoran migrants, father and daughter, who came to be known simply as Oscar and Valeria, who drowned crossing the Rio Grande in June of 2019. A photograph of their bodies went viral, sparking outrage, sparking grief, and also sparking trutherism. There was a post in the I'm 1015 Border Patrol Facebook group charging that the photograph was a fake. So this poem speaks to that photograph, but also to these charges. By the way, floaters takes its title from the term used by certain members of the Border Patrol to describe those who drown crossing over. So we begin here with the title poem, Floaters. Epigraph. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and ask. Have you all ever seen floaters this clean? I'm not trying to be an ass, but I have never seen floaters like this. Could this be another edited photo? We've all seen the Dems and liberal parties do some pretty sick things. Anonymous post, I'm 1015, Border Patrol Facebook group. Like a beer bottle thrown into the river by a boy too drunk to cry. Like the shard of a styrofoam cup drained of coffee brown is the river. Like the plank of a fishing boat broken in half by the river, the dead float. And the dead have a name. Floaters, say the men of the Border Patrol, keeping watch all night by the river, hearts pumping coffee as they say the word floaters, soft as a bubble, hard as a shoe as it nudges the body to see if it breathes, to see if it moans, to see if it sits up and speaks. And the dead have names, a feast day parade of names, names that dress all in red, names that twirl skirts, names that blow whistles, names that shake rattles, names that sing in praise of the saints. Say Oscar Alberto Martinez Ramirez. Say Angie Valeria Martinez Avalos. See how they rise off the tongue, the calling of bird to bird somewhere in the trees above our heads, trilling in the dark heart of the leaves. Say what we know of them now they are dead. Oscar slapped dough for pizza with oven-blistered fingers. Daughter Valeria sang, banging a toy guitar. He slipped free of the apron he wore in the blast of the oven, sold the motorcycle he would kick till it sputtered to life, counted off pesos for the journey across the river, and the last of his 25 years, and the last of her 23 months. There is another name that beats its wings in the heart of the trees. Say, Tania Vanessa Avalos, Oscar's wife and Valeria's mother, the witness stumbling along the river. Now their names rise off her tongue. Say, Oscar y Valeria. He swam from Matamoros across to Brownsville. The girl slung around his neck, stood her in the weeds on the Texas side of the river, swore to return with her mother in hand, turning his back as fathers do, who later say, I turned around and she was gone. In the time it takes for a bird to hop from branch to branch, Valeria jumped in the river after her father. Maybe he called out her name as he swept her up from the river. Maybe the river drowned out his voice as the water swept them away. Tanya called out the names of the saints, but the saints drowsed in the stupor of birds in the dark, their cages covered with blankets. The men on patrol would never hear their pleas for asylum, watching for floaters, hearts pumping coffee all night on the Texas side of the river. No one, they say, had ever seen floaters this clean. Oscar's black shirt yanked up to the armpits, Valeria's arms slung around her father's neck, even after the light left her eyes, both face down in the weeds back on the Mexican side of the river. Another edited photo. See how her head disappears in his shirt, the waterlogged diaper bunched in her pants, the blue of the blue cans. The radio warned us about the crisis actors we see at one school shooting after another. The man called Oscar will breathe, sit up, speak, tug the black shirt over his head, shower off the mud, and shake hands with the photographer. Yet, the floaters did not float down the Rio Grande like Olympians showing off the backstroke, nor did their souls float up to Dallas, land of rumored jobs and a president shot in the head as he waved from his motorcade. No bubbles rose from their breath in the mud, light as the iridescent circles of soap that would fascinate a 2-year-old. And the dead still have names. Names that sing in praise of the saints, names that flower in blossoms of white, a cortege of names dressed all in black, trailing the coffins to the cemetery. Carved their names in headlines and gravestones they would never know in the kitchens of this cacophonous world. Enter their names in the book of names. Say, Oscar Alberto Martinez Ramirez. Say, Angie Valeria Martinez Avalos. Bury them in a corner of the cemetery named for the sainted Archbishop of the poor, shot in the heart saying Mass, bullets bought by the taxes I paid when I worked as a bouncer and fractured my hand 40 years ago, and bumper stickers read, El Salvador is Spanish for Vietnam. When the last bubble of breath escapes the body, may the men who speak of floaters, who have never seen floaters this clean, float through the clouds to the heavens, where they paddle the air as they wait for the saint who flips through the keys on his ring like a drowsy janitor, till he fingers the key that turns the lock and shuts the gate on their babble-tongued faces, and they plunge back to earth, a shower of hailstones pelting the river, the Mexican side of the river. Can you hear me okay, everyone? Everyone here okay? Yeah? This next poem I want to dedicate to Maria. It's a poem about a historic injustice. The execution of Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti, Italian immigrants and anarchists. Many of the details in this poem come from the August 23rd, 1927 edition of the New York Times. The former site of Charlestown State Prison, where Sacco and Vanzetti were executed, is the current site of Bunker Hill Community College, a school with a large immigrant population speaking many tongues. I have visited this college multiple times. So the poem draws a connection between repression of immigrants past and present and the ultimate futility of that repression. This poem is called I Now Pronounce You Dead. For Sacco and Vanzetti, executed August the 23rd, 1927. On the night of his execution, Bartolomeo Vanzetti, immigrant from Italia, fishmonger, anarchist, shook the hand of Warden Hendry and thanked him for everything. I wish to forgive some people for what they are now doing to me, said Vanzetti, blindfolded, strapped down to the chair that would shoot 2,000 volts through his body. The warden's eyes were wet. The warden's mouth was dry. The warden heard his own voice croak, "Under the law, I now pronounce you dead." No one could hear him. With the same hand that shook the hand of Bartolomeo Vanzetti, Warden Hendry of Charlestown Prison waved at the executioner, who gripped the switch to yank it down. The walls of Charlestown Prison are gone, to ruin, to dust, to mist. Where the prison stood, there is a school. In the hallways, tongues speak the Spanish of the Dominican, the Portuguese of Cabo Verde, the Creole of Haiti. No one can hear the last words of Vanzetti or the howl of thousands on Boston Common when they knew. After midnight, at the hour of the execution, Warden Hendry sits in the cafeteria, his hand shaking as if shocked, rice flying off his fork So he cannot eat no matter how the hunger feeds on him, muttering the words that only he can hear. I now pronounce you dead. Well, I firmly believe that times of hate call for poems of love. And there are love poems in this book. My wife, Lauren, is a poet, a novelist, a teacher, and the best human being I know. So, of course, I wrote her a love poem in the voice of a giant tortoise. This poem is called Love Song of the Galapagos Tortoise. I am Lonesome George, the last Galapagos tortoise of Pinta Island. I see Darwin's hairy face on t-shirts and hats, backpacks, and mugs. I see the statues. I could read the history books if someone turns the pages. I remember Darwin. I was there the day he landed in the ship named for a dog with floppy ears. He tried to lift me up and strained his groin. He climbed on my saddleback shell and tried to ride me, giggling like a boy on a birthday pony. He slipped off and rolled over in the surf, spitting sand. He watched me plod around in search of cactus to crunch, timing me with a pocket watch. He yelled in my ear to see if I was deaf, and I hissed at his face. He invited my tortoise brothers and sisters to board the Beagle. The crew hauled them up the gangplank as guests of honor. Darwin noted in his journal, "Young tortoises make excellent soup." Like the pirates and the whalers, the naturalists licked their spoon soup in their beards, toasting the voyage with glasses of our urine. I am Lonesome George. I crane my leathery neck and hiss at everyone. I tuck my head inside my shell. You call and call my name till I peek out. I am a creature of the tropics who curses the icebergs of December. You dress me up in cardigans, sweaters, and wool scarves for winter. I groan about my gut, intimidating the curious with a drum roll of flatulence. You feed me the cactus of Pinta Island and pizza from the Jersey Shore. I am afraid of the toaster and dream of Darwin's beard caught in its coils. You are afraid of nothing as you make waffles jump from the glowing machine. I plod down the road as cars honk behind me, seafarers hungry for soup. You let me steer the car, even though the world is blurry, and you yell in my ear when the other cars cruise like pirate ships through stop signs. I will hiss at the next TV reporter who calls me Lonesome George. This world teems with pirates, whalers, and naturalists on parade, waving their spoons in the air, craving the delicacy of buttery tortoise flesh. But now I crane my neck to croak the love song of the Galapagos tortoise for you, and you swear I am your Frank Sinatra. I am your Sam Cooke. I sing better than Darwin. By the way, every detail in that poem about Darwin is true. Historical research. I'll read two more poems, and they both have something to do with my father, Francisco Luis Espada, Frank Espada. I am from the East New York section of Brooklyn and the Linden projects there. My father was a community organizer. It's an early morning in 1968. Death rides the elevator in Brooklyn. On a winter morning in 1968, my father left to walk the picket line. He rode the elevator in his black coat, hood over his head, in the hour before daybreak. On the third floor, the doors opened. A white man waiting for the elevator stood there, peered at my father in his black coat and hood in his brown skin, then screamed and fled. The doors closed. My father laughed on the picket line that morning. He laughed for years. "The guy thought I was deaf," he would say. Death rides an elevator in Brooklyn. Mugger death, militant death, Puerto Rican death. Listening to the story, he did not stare or scream or run. He stepped into the elevator and the doors closed behind him. And I'll finish my reading with this poem. My father, Martín Espada, was born in the mountain town of Utuado, Puerto Rico in the year 1930. He died in Pacifica, California in the year 2014. When Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico 4 years ago, I suddenly saw Utuado everywhere, on TV, on the internet, in the headlines. As John Lee Anderson put it in the pages of the New Yorker, Utuado had become, quote, a byword for the island's devastation. Let's keep in mind, too, that approximately 4,000 people died. So I started talking to my father, who had died 3 years before. Actually, I started talking to his ashes in a box on my bookshelf, and that was the genesis of this last poem. And it is the last poem in the book. Letter to my father, October 2017. You once said, "My reward for this life will be 1,000 pounds of dirt shoveled in my face." You were wrong. You are 7 pounds of ashes in a box, a Puerto Rican flag wrapped around you next to a red brick from the house in Utuado where you were born, all crammed together on my bookshelf. You taught me there is no God, no life after this life, so I know you're not watching me type this letter over my shoulder. When I was a boy, you were God. I watched from the 7th floor of the projects as you walked down into the street to stop a public execution. A big man caught a small man stealing his car, and everyone in Brooklyn heard the car alarm wail of the condemned, "He's killing me." At a word from you, the executioner's hand slipped from the hair of the thief. "The kid was high," was all you said when you came back to us. When I was a boy and you were God, we flew to Puerto Rico. You said, "My grandfather was the mayor of Utuado. His name was Buenaventura." That means good fortune. I believed in your grandfather's name. I heard the tree frogs chanting to each other all night. I saw a banana leaf and elephant palm sprouting from the mountain's belly. I gnawed the mango's pit, and the sweet yellow hair stuck between my teeth. I said to you, "You came from another planet. How'd you do it?" You said, "Every morning, just before I woke up, I saw the mountains." Every morning, I see the mountains. And Utuado, 3 sisters, all in their 70s, all bedridden, All Pentecostales who only left the house for church lay sleeping on mattresses spread across the floor when the hurricane gutted the mountain the way a butcher slices open a dangled pig, and a rolling wall of mud buried them, leaving the fourth sister to stagger into the street, screaming like an unheeded prophet about the end of the world. Utuado, a man who cultivated a garden of aguacate and carambola, feeding the avocado and star fruit to his nieces from New York, so the trees in his garden beheaded all at once like the soldiers of a beaten army, and so hanged himself. Utuado, a welder and a handyman, rigged a pulley with a shopping cart to ferry rice and beans across the river where the bridge collapsed, witnessed the cart swaying above so many hands that raised the sign that told the helicopters, Campamento Los Olvidados, Camp of the Forgotten. Los Olvidados wait 7 hours in line for a government meal of Skittles and Vienna sausage, or a tarp to cover the bones of a house with no roof, as the fungus grows on their skin from sleeping on mattresses drenched with the spit of the hurricane. They drink the brown water, waiting for microscopic monsters in their bellies to visit plagues upon them. A nurse says, "These people are going to have an epidemic. These people are going to die." The president flips rolls of paper towels to a crowd at a church in Guaynabo, Zeus lobbing thunderbolts on the locked ward of his delusions. Down the block, cousin Ricardo Bernice's boy says that somebody stole his can of diesel. I heard somebody ask you once what Puerto Rico needed to be free, and you said, 3 pulgadas de sangre en la calle. 3 inches of blood in the street. Now, 3 inches of mud flow through the streets of Utuado, and troops patrol the town, as if guarding the vein of copper in the ground, as if a shovel digging graves in the backyard might strike the ore below, as if La Brigada, swinging machetes to clear the road, might remember the last uprising. I know you're not God. I have the proof. 7 pounds of ashes in a box on my bookshelf. Gods do not die. And yet, I want you to be God again. Stride from the crowd to seize the president's arm before another roll of paper towels sails away. Thunder Spanish obscenities in his face. Banish him to a roofless rainstorm in Utuado so he unravels one soaked sheet after another till there is nothing left but his cardboard heart. I promised myself I would stop talking to you, white box of gray grit. You were deaf even before you died. Hear my promise now. I will take you to the mountains, where houses lost like ships at sea rise blue and yellow from the mud. I will open my hands. I will scatter your ashes. En Utuado. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much.